Well, hello everybody. Today we got a amazing guest for you, a guy by the name of Connor McKemey. Connor is or was a Division I lacrosse player. He also coached at Division I level, and now he's a motivational speaker. And I've had the honor and privilege to get to know him over the last few months. He's also author of Life Ignited. All right, and after you see the talk today, hopefully you all go out and buy a whole bunch of these things because it's guy's got a pretty amazing life. Despite, I'm not an antique, I'm a vintage age, right? So I can still call Connor a kid, but you're not. He's a pretty amazing guy. So Connor, welcome to the show, my friend. Shake your hand real quick. All right, and all right, let's jump right into it. Obviously, we'll talk about the incident here in a bit, but prior to that, kind of give us, the audience, a sense of how it was growing up. Where'd you grow up, for one? And kind of picks, if there is anything, try and identify some of the things that help prepare you for the incident, that it would help you get through what you had to get through.
Yeah, 100%. So I grew up in like a small town, Fort Mill, South Carolina. It's just south of Charlotte. And I had a dad who was, a Navy guy for 31 years, and my mom was a public school teacher. So it wasn't, we weren't living lavish, but we were comfortable for sure. We lived, pretty average life. And I had an older brother and a younger brother. We were all really close in age. I think there was a period in time where all three of us were in high school for 1 year. So when you think about like how close we were, it's like, to have three kids in high school at one time together, or three kids in college at one time together. So always really, really close, always competing in rough housing. I know we were little for sure. I mean, it was trips to the ER, broken walls, windows, whatever. We were a rough and rowdy crowd, but I think, my parents did a good job at keeping us level headed and knowing that, these were our built-in best friends, right? My brothers, both of them are two of my best friends to this day, will be my best friends for life. And if you would have asked us that 15, 20 years ago when we were butting heads and fighting and all that, probably not. But the truth is, I think they gave us a really great foundation of, how to respect each other, how to understand, each other, and but also have that, brother bonding and competing against each other. It wasn't like a bad thing, but for me, being the middle is like, I always wanted to compete against my older brother and his friends. And I knew if I was going against those guys and finding success or being able to keep up, then kids my own age, it shouldn't be a problem, right? These are kids that were 2 years older than me, that had anything that they were doing. They'd been playing it longer. They were bigger, they were faster, they were stronger. And if I could just stay with them, then I was like, all right, I could be okay. I could be okay when I compete against my own friends. And for my little brother, it was like just trying to keep him along. And he was, definitely smaller than the two of us for sure. But man, that kid would never give up and had, the biggest heart and never quit. So it was like between the two of those guys, it was like my older brother showing me the ropes, my little brother showing me what it meant to just like never give up, never stop fighting. And I had that really good balance between the two of them that I think really laid a great base for, who I was going to be, which was, a kid that was just ultra competitive, that was like a Labrador retriever. I think my parents used to call me, because like you could throw a ball out there, didn't matter what it was, football, basketball, soccer, it's like I'm chasing it, I'm having a good time. And that's where I always found like my happy place, is being out on the field, whether it was with my brothers, whether it was with my friends, organized or pickup, right? It doesn't matter. It could be the neighborhood game, or it could be the state championship. It's like just being out on the field. I always found like that was my safe place.
Yeah. Okay. So, again, getting right prior to the burn incident. Besides your brothers roughhousing you and showing you heart, and one showing you just what it means to to get just to kick ass, I guess, for lack of a better term. You mentioned your dad being in the Navy. How did that dynamic maybe play into it as well? And I'm assuming he deployed a lot and was gone a lot.
Yeah, so
So you're getting into your mom too. So how did all that kind of affect you?
Yeah, so my dad actually, he was deployed before we were born, and my older brother and I were actually both born in Gaeta, Italy, Naples, Italy. Where we were there for a few years before moving back to Alexandria. We were here in Alexandria for a couple of years before moving down to Charlotte, the Charlotte area. And at that point, it was, we had three kids, all relatively young. And being a full-time Navy guy, and my mom having to take care of all three of us at home, it was like we had to make some changes And so that's when he started working for Bank of America and started doing the reservist stuff. But even when we were in middle school, I mean, he was deployed in 2008,
Yeah.
for now, and he was gone for about 8 months. And the only thing that brought him back was the accident, unfortunately. I had my accident, and he was flying back for the holidays anyway, so it kind of worked out in the way that he was landing in Atlanta and I was in Augusta. But between him and my mom, who, my mom, once she started working as at the public schools, was just like, you see them every single day grinding and doing everything they can to provide for me and my brothers and give us, every opportunity that we could imagine. And I know we all have the biggest respect for them because they're badasses in their own right. I think my mom's one, has a closet full of Emmys now and all sorts of stuff for she's a video and production teacher, television production teacher at the high school, and they've won all sorts of awards and championships and all sorts of stuff like that. My dad, for me, was like, what I always respected about him is he was, going to work every single day for however many hours, but it's like he could come home and still play pickup hoops with us or go have a catch in the backyard or do something like that. And for me, I know, like, I learned so much from outside of your coaches in that structure by just being out on the court, being out in the backyard with him, like learning those true life lessons, inside that parameter where it's just me and him. And I think like we all me and my older brother especially had this bond with my dad where it's like he's an amazing basketball player, and all we ever wanted to do was try to beat him one-on-one. And obviously it's tough when you're young and they might let you win or whatever. My parents weren't that type. It was like my dad's gonna beat me 21-0 and he could beat me 21-0, and then it's like we start getting closer and he's always been one of the best athletes I've ever seen. For somebody that, again, is working, all the time. And for him, he would go and play basketball at the gym at like 5 a.m. every day at the Y, and then get his clothes on and go off to work. And it's like, man never complained about anything. He always, again, I think had a smile on his face and was caring and was loving. And I think that showed so much for us as a young age. I don't think you appreciate it as much when you're a kid because you're a kid, but now being, close to 30 and watching my older brother and his wife, about to have a kid and all these other things, it's like you start growing up and you realize like, man, we really did have it great. And I owed so much to who I am and what I do to my foundations, my rocks, which were my parents and the people that raised me. And just being able to watch them every single day and see what they were able to do and put up with, man, it meant the world. And I know when I had my accident, having both of them having to split time between being there with me in the hospital and one being home with my other brothers, and just like they did that for months without batting an eye, without complaining, without anything else like that. And for me, like, think about how important that is when you're in the most chaotic situation of your life, but your parents are calm and still and controlled, and your home life is there's a balance there and a safety there. And again, early on, I know that added such a huge boost into my recovery and my life.
Yeah, so that's a good segue. So I'm going to tell the audience a funny thing. So when I first met Connor and I started getting to know him a little bit, I realized that this would be a great person to have on the podcast. So I asked you, remember I said, hey, I got a podcast, you want to be on it? Yeah. And you're like, what's it called? I said, Scar Tissue. So when I had that, and I was laughing, but this is a good shift now. Let's talk about the incident. What happened? And just kind of describe, the next few years of what you needed to endure to come out of it, and really kind of pick out also some of those life lessons that you might have gotten from how you got through it all.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So for me, you go all the way back to December 21st, 2008. At that time, I was in the 8th grade. Yeah. I was, quarterback of the football team. I was on the basketball team. I was, arguably one of the better lacrosse players in the area at the time. And for a middle school kid, you were checking all the boxes that you wanted to check, and you felt like things were going pretty smooth, and they were fairly easy. Again, during this time, my dad was deployed, so I think that to me was difficult. That he missing my lacrosse season in the spring and missing my football. That was the guy, again, my dad being the guy that I can go have a catch with and talk about, football or basketball or all those things with him. That guy's not there. And so you're relying heavily on your older brother. You're relying heavily on some of those other, father figures in your life, coaches and whatnot. But, that was a time in my life where, again, I was just kind of like every single day it was go to school, go to practice, play a game, whatever, rinse, repeat. And we were doing that since March, and now we're into December. But I was also still a middle school kid. I wanted to like have a girlfriend and do all that stuff. And so I always talk about that because like you have to think about being a 13-year-old kid or a 14-year-old kid. And it's like there's this girl that I really liked who liked me, but we had been friends for a really long time. So we're trying to make that, jump and see what it is. So for me, it's like I'm a hopeless romantic. I want to have this big, like really nice night. We have a fire pit outside. We'll roast some s'mores. We'll listen to some music. We'll, hot tub, sit out under the stars, all this stuff, right? In my head, I was like, this is perfect. Nothing could go wrong. And
I'm sorry, but that's pretty awesome.
yeah, for me, that was like, it's always been who I am. So I was like, I wanted to show her something sweet, something nice, whatever.
Yeah.
And before she came, it was just the only thing I had left to do was get the fire started. And unfortunately, like it had rained a few days prior to that. And so I've been trying to dry out all the logs and everything for the next few days, knowing that this date was coming up. And so I get everything ready. I'm trying to light the fire. And for whatever reason, like it's not staying lit. It would, start going and then just go out, start going and go out, or sparks or whatever. And there was a gas canister really close by. And so as I'm like flipping over logs and as I'm trying to like get this thing started, you end up hitting, the gas canister, which causes this explosion. And for me, it was so quick that you just hear a bang. And, it's pitch black, it's December, it's nighttime, and you just hear this bang and your eyes shut and you just see this red, yellow glow around you. And so you don't know, like you're completely covered head to toe in fire, but you felt that explosion, you felt that force hit you, and I just started running. And that, my natural instinct was I feel this explosion, and I just started moving. And for me, it didn't seem like it was an eternity. It felt like it was relatively quick, but I have no concept of how long it was before my mom ends up knocking me down. My next door neighbors are coming over and putting me out with towels and in the cushions and all that stuff that we have available outside. And then I open my eyes and I'm laying face down and I can just see the first thing, my hands being black and charcoaled and the skin peeled off. And my shirt that I was wearing was basically completely gone outside of where I had rolled up the sleeves. And so, again, you don't have, you're 13 years old, you've never seen anything like that. Even in the movies, it's like you don't see stuff like that, right? So it's like you have no concept of how bad it is or what's going on, but I had some feeling. And, I was at least looking around, I was like I was there. So it wasn't until I got in the back of the ambulance where I finally asked those guys, like, hey, am I going to be okay? And before I even get an answer, I basically have an IV put in me and pumped full of drugs and I'm out. And fortunately enough, I wake up a couple months later in a hospital bed where I'm wrapped head to toe in bandages and gauze. I have pins in all of my fingers and my toes. I realized, I could see early on that I was missing an index finger, part of my thumb. My fingers on my left hand were bent a little bit. But again, you're just like, what happened? Right? For me, and what I try to explain to people is like, I went to sleep in the back of an ambulance and woke up in a completely different world, in a completely different body, and with just a whole, like, that point is basically like a brand new life going forward from that point on, outside of the memories, the thoughts, and everything else that you had
Was
before.
it 90% of your body?
When they finally did the statistics, it was 90% burn, 75% being third degree.
Wow.
And, they gave me on that initial night like a 1% chance of survival. And their main goal was they knew my dad was flying back. They were trying to just keep me alive long enough so he could see me. It's right around the holidays time. So we had all of our cousins, my aunts, my uncles, my grandparents from both sides of the family kind of drove down to Augusta, Georgia from all over. And they basically, posted up in a hospital bed and just waited for a couple of days to see how things were going. And with the burn injuries, it's in anything traumatic, it's like it's hour by hour, when things change. And again, for me, I wake up, I know I'm okay because I wake up, but they're telling me, hey, you're never going to walk again. Hey, my room's covered wall to wall with sports memorabilia and teams and all this stuff. And they're like, we know you're a big athlete, but that's probably, out the door. Like if you can't walk, you're probably not going to be able to play sports. You're going to be probably bound to a wheelchair for the rest of your life and have people taking care of you, but you'll just be happy that you're alive. And I think for me, it was so hard to hear at such a young age, because you're like, man, for the next 60, 70, 80 years, like this is what it's going to be. People poking and prodding me, people taking care of me. Like I got no say in this. And it upset me early on, but after having my parents there, my brothers there, and all those people, they were just, reminding me that like the choice is up to me, right? It's like I can still try some of these things. I can try to push the boundaries. I can attempt to walk or run or whatever, but like I don't have to. Nobody's gonna force me to do it, but it's up to me if I wanted to try. And I think the way I was raised and just being an athlete, it's like when you get hurt, you either rehab and heal and get better, or you don't.
Right.
And it was like I didn't feel like I had a choice being that young and wanting so much more out of my life than being confined to a hospital bed or a wheelchair. And so I was like, why not, try some of these things? And at first it was, all right, we got to learn how to stand and put weight on my body that is now, I was 6'1" in the hospital, like 130 pounds.
Ooh,
So I lost all my muscle
Yep.
muscle mass. I lost a ton of weight. You're trying to balance on these new feet. And I mean, I'm not going to sit here and show people my feet, but my right foot especially is completely covered in scars.
Yeah.
And they wanted to amputate it, but it was my parents basically saying, no, like let him see that he has feet. Let him believe that he can walk and run and have that little bit of hope. And I think for me, that was all I needed. It was like I had two hands, I had 2 feet. Like I had to come to grips with dealing with the pain, but everybody it deals with pain one way or the other, from bad backs to bad knees, shoulders, whatever it is, right? We're all dealing with stuff. We're going to deal with stuff.
Yep.
And that became like my norm. It was not easy at all, but it was, once I started understanding, all right, I can handle this, I can take this, it's mostly just mental and getting through that block. And when you push through, you became so addicted to the progress, to getting a little bit better, to trying to see what more I could do the next day. If it was I stood and I took 2 steps today, it was like, man, tomorrow let's try to take 4, and then let's take 10, and and before I know it, I'm walking down the hall, I'm going around the ICU, I'm moving, and the rest of it just started to snowball because you became so obsessed with not the fact of what I lost, not the fact of what I couldn't do, but it was like, man, like what more can I do? Like the body's a beautiful thing. It can heal. It can put itself back together. It can handle so much. But I just had to give it an opportunity, and I had to take care of myself properly. I had to trust the people that were around me 100%. But once they kind of gave me the keys to just say go, and like we'll take care of the rest. If you fall and you break something, if you tear your skin grass, if anything happens, I had great support system, people that were like, listen, we'll take care of it, but let's see what can happen. And that was a beautiful thing from them, and it just allowed me to just try and fail and try and succeed and learn everything that we could about what the extent of my injury is. What are the actual limitations? And what's been beautiful now, like 15 years past, is it's rewritten a lot of what they thought could be done, especially with younger patients, kids that are still growing, kids that haven't hit, puberty or all those other things. 'Cause that was right around that time where you need a ton of calories in you, just to grow, just to maintain how your body's developing. And not to mention that, I'm recovering from this massive injury and I'm trying to be an athlete and all these other things, right? It's like, and so crazy things like them taking this traditional, like pediatric, protein powder, because I was on a feeding tube, and then taking like muscle milk protein powder and mixing this thing in a huge concoction and giving it to me, because I was getting like 16,000 calories a day, like pumped in me, just so I could, maintain that, even just 130 something pounds, just so my body was able to, stay in that form.
So I was going to ask you, and you said that they rethought a lot of things of what is physically possible for burned victims. And what are they? Because I've had, I was misdiagnosed, fortunately, with cancer a while ago, and I had to suffer through people telling me, "Oh, you got cancer," blah blah blah. I'm like, I don't feel sick, and and it finally ended up again, getting through it without having to worry about it was a misdiagnosis. But it always struck me as odd that part of the medical community comes at you like that, say, "Oh, you're done," like, "Oh, thanks." Right. So how did that was that? It sounds like that was part of your motivation, at least questioning, hey, this can't be it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did that, what was that the main motivating factor, or were those other, or they all kind of combined, all those motivating factors from your previous, childhood and all those experiences you already talked about, they all kind of combined to really kind of give you that fortitude to kind of push on through. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of a few things, and I always tell people, especially now, like I benefited 100% of being a young teenager that was already, as a young teenager, you're like a little bit rebellious, you're a little bit inquisitive, right? Like
Yeah.
you're trying to find the loophole or the difference, and for me it was like, well, why can't I do some of these things? Like, what is it? And a lot of it is because of the pain,
Yeah.
because the skin grafts won't hold up, all those different things. But and for a lot of people, probably, some more sane than me, were like, okay, like I trust these people and I trusted my doctors. There was
Sure.
no ill will there. It was just like, well, once they gave me the freedom to go out and try and say, look, we'll put you back together. We get it. You're stubborn. Like you're going to do these things regardless. So, we'll go out and try. And again, I had to learn along the way. I I eventually got back to playing lacrosse, and I had a really great freshman season. And it was after the season, I'm kicking a soccer ball with one of my buddies in PE class, and I didn't have the right shoes on, so I'm just out there barefoot, like kicking a soccer ball that I've been doing since I was 4 years old, whatever.
Yeah.
And but I hadn't kicked a soccer ball barefoot with my new feet. And I to my credit, I felt like I put in a really nice cross. Kid headed in, it was a goal. I looked down and there was just like a little line of blood on my foot. I was like, oh, okay. I pick up my foot and my big toe just like dropped off.
Oh,
and
man.
was really just hanging on by the bottom skin. And so we go to the hospital. They're like, why were you kicking a soccer ball, barefoot? And I was like, well, I've done this my whole life. I didn't know.
Yeah.
And it was like, all right, going forward for the rest of my life, we'll cross that off my list.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
learned, all right, don't, when I go to the beach or I'm playing, pickup sports or whatever it is with my friends and family, it's like, all right, just make sure you have shoes on. All right. Like, we'll take care of that.
Yeah.
It's small change. And so I had to be a little adaptive, and I knew things weren't going to be, super easy, especially with my skin early on. I could bump into things. Playing lacrosse is a contact sport. I would be wearing, not just the regular padding that we had, but making sure I had compression garments. And you see it a lot more now with people wearing, full pants or full tops and stuff like that. But this was, again, 10, 15 years ago, it hadn't reached what it is now, but I was just making sure, like, I was wearing the leggings, I was wearing my, just that extra layer of, cloth or whatever was an extra layer of skin for me that, like, I couldn't afford to be playing on a turf field without it, because I'd be tearing up my knees and my arms and all that.
So you made
stuff.
so you got burnt in 8th grade, so you made it by freshman year, you were playing again.
Yeah. So by like May, I think we were out of the hospital in May of 2009. So it was like, a little over 5 months.
Yeah.
And I was just really spent the next, I was able to graduate from 8th grade, and forever thankful for that, because that could have, you're with all your friends and you want to continue to be with all your friends and all those things. And they did a great job of, like, letting me keep up my schoolwork and all those things while I was in the hospital.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Yeah.
But yeah, I eventually got back to playing by probably September that year, September, October that year, being able to get into like a fall lacrosse league. Because at that time I had figured out how to run probably over the summer between May and June. And then I was working with, this great guy, Chip Sigmund from Charlotte, who really took me on, because once I left the hospital, there wasn't a lot of, physical therapists or anybody really that wanted to take on the ambition that I had, right? They saw a kid that could barely walk, who was now maybe 140, 145 pounds. Like, he could walk and move, but, I couldn't run yet. I wasn't strong. I wasn't, definitely nowhere close to being able to go play a contact sport. But this guy just, took me in. He was like, I'm going to train him. Like,
how'd you guys meet?
Through a family friend. So a girl that I grew up with, her dad actually, is involved with Muscle Milk and is a bodybuilder and in that world. And
the Muscle Milk, the protein drink?
Yeah, the protein.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
so his company, I think, I don't know if they started that or if they ended up acquiring it along the way, but he's big into the bodybuilding world, knows, is a genius, and this is one of his friends, longtime trainer. I think Chip was a strength and conditioning coach at like App State for a while for the football team, and has worked with athletes and professionals in the area, and was just like, listen, like, I'm going to train you like you were a kid that needed to get bigger, faster, and stronger. All right, there's enough base there that I could work with, and we'll modify things that we need to modify. Obviously with my hands and my feet and just everything else. But like, he took me in and they made me feel less like a patient and more like the athlete that I once knew. And I think for me, that was such a big moment because you had kind of peaked at where you could with just all the therapy and everything else that you had done. And it was trying to take that next step. And I needed somebody to allow that to happen. And again, Chip took us in and took me in, and eventually I was able to go and train there with my brothers too. So like, I had them there, and I was able to get that competitive edge again that I missed. And
plus your brothers are not going to give any slack.
No. So like, that helped. Honestly, it helped like accelerate the process, because now I'm back with like that comfort zone that I felt like was so foreign. Because again, before you're patient. It doesn't matter how you cut it. Like, I was a patient, and that's how I was treated for the most part, and that's fine. And it was just like, I wanted to feel normal. I wanted to get back to where I was, and now I was back in this environment that allowed me to kind of blossom and grow. And again, I went from barely walking and running to, by the time I got through my freshman year, I was, even though it was JV, it's like I led the state in scoring. We won every game in the state. Like, and eventually I got called up to the varsity for the playoffs by the end of my freshman year. And it's like, man, like, what else could I have asked for? Like, if nothing ever happened to me before, that's probably where, probably right around where I would have been anyway. So it's like, you felt like you were finally back. And then for me, it was like, I didn't want to just be back. I didn't want to just get back to where I wanted to go. It was like my dream growing up was to play, at the highest level. Didn't matter what it was, if it was football, if it was lacrosse, whatever. It's like, I wanted to do it. Yeah. And so after I got through my freshman year, it was like, all right, we have that foundation. We're back to like where we want to be.
What weight were you about that time? Were you back
I think I got to like into the 160s, 170s, probably by my freshman year, which is like where I kind of needed to be at that point.
Besides your foot, what other things do you have to look out as far? You talk about covering your skin. They really didn't have the compression stuff back then per se. What did you do to kind of, just kind of take care of the things that you need to take care of?
Yeah. So it's like making sure my feet were wrapped, before running around and playing. Like, the skin is so thin around both my feet that like when anybody gets blisters or whatever, that it's part of breaking in new shoes, whatever.
Right.
But for me, it actually shears off the skin, and it's like a giant open wound now. And that's something when you're playing sports, like, that's never going to heal during the season. And then I'm prone to infection, and all these other things that I had to deal with through high school and even into college. It was just part of the game. Going to the hospital usually once or twice a year to deal with an infection and deal with some of those open wounds. But as best as I could, be proactive.
Yeah.
Again, you learned because you didn't know as well when I first started, but it was like, all right, these are the things that I have to do to prevent, whether it's wearing the compression garments, whether it's wrapping up my feet, making sure, especially during the summer, in the hotter months when we're playing travel ball and playing multiple games a day, it's like my body doesn't regulate temperature as well.
Oh, wow.
A lot of my sweat glands on my arms and my legs were burned all the way through. So I sweat a ton on my head, I sweat a ton on my torso. But for your arms and your legs, especially in a sport where you're running around and you're out in the heat, it's like I needed to have a cooling element to it, whether it was ice cold towels, whether it was just like wetting down those compression garments so that forms like a pseudo type, almost, like sweat method, right? It's like if I wet all the garments and now I'm running around and they're evaporating, I'm kind of getting that feeling of what it should be doing. And again, that I had to learn the hard way, which was overheating, which was, bad things, but like small steps that I was like, all right, we got, and so as best as I could, especially at a young age, just trying to be proactive when you're a kid and you're not really proactive to begin with. It's like having to mature early.
How'd your coaches handle you? Were they supportive? Were they very inquisitive? How did they?
I think, again, I benefited from being in an area that we had been in for a long time, right? We had been in Fort Mill for a while at that point. So a lot of the teams, and lacrosse was still very, very small at that time. So a lot of the coaches and a lot of the kids that I played with and everybody else, like we've been playing together since we were in elementary or middle school. So they were all very supportive for the most part. And I think, more than I would be at times, like making sure, hey, like you're not practicing unless you have your compression garments on, not letting me get away with that stuff. Like, oh, I just left them at home or whatever, it was like, you're not playing, you're not practicing, you're not doing anything if you don't have X, Y, and Z.
Awesome.
And so that, again, like they didn't let me slide on those things. And they also understood, like, especially when I got to college, it's like my coach in college, like Coach Torby, definitely understood. All right, like if I want to be at my best, like I can't perform it at and be practicing at this rate of clip all the time. Like my body, my feet, like just couldn't hold up. It didn't matter what kind of shape I was in or whatever. It's just like, especially at the collegiate level, Division I level, it's like that's such a high intensity. But you have kids, even when I was younger, it's like we had upperclassmen, juniors and seniors that would practice only a few times a week because they got really bad backs or bad knees or whatever. It's like, it's not like they're slacking. It's not like they're, fat or lazy or anything else like that. It's like, look, we need them on Saturdays. We need them on game days. And like, they're putting in the work through rehab and all these other things, but they don't need to log the actual physical miles during practice or whatever. Because that, it's not going to change, if anything, it's going to be more of a detriment to them. And so I think like it took some adapting. I did have an issue when I was in high school with a new coach that like had basically a standardized run test and was like, everybody has to pass this in order to play. And it was, it didn't matter how much time I spent prepping or practicing or doing it in my free time. It was like I couldn't do it. My body just like literally couldn't do it. And so like it was having an honest conversation with him that's like, look, I'll do whatever I need to do, outside of practice. I'll do, whatever you need to see. But it was like, if this is like what I need to do to play, then it's just like, it's not going to happen. It's like I physically can't do it. I'm falling apart at the seams here, and I'm trying. Literally, I'm trying. But and again, it's like it's a learning experience for both. And like I understood like where the coach comes from. It's like you don't want to play favoritism. You don't want to give. Sure. And if you expect
got standards, you want to
you want to. So it's like I get all of that. I understand that fully. And so like I was going to support him regardless of what he said. It was just like, look, this is where I'm at, and this is what I needed to do, and if that's not going to work, then like that's okay. And unfortunately for me, like it didn't work out in that period, but I still ended up getting to play college lacrosse. It didn't change my direction or my path or whatever. It was just I had to miss a season of lacrosse during high school. Like, does it suck? Sure, but did it change where I wanted to go or who I ended up being? No. And if anything, it helped me retool and refocus when I got to college. That was like, look, I want to get back to this more than anything. So like, I'm going to go 10 times harder now than I ever did to make sure like that opportunity is still there and like I can make the most of it.
Yeah. So why lacrosse? And you talk about football, basketball, and all the stuff that you played growing up. What has the final switch to get you into lacrosse?
I think so football probably would have always been my like number one. I think growing up in the South, it's just a massive sport.
It's a religion.
And especially like where we were, the town right by us, Rock Hill, South Carolina, is where like Jadeveon Clowney, Stephon Gilmore, like bunch of NFL guys have come from there, and these were all guys that were right around my age or a little above me or below me, right? And so, it is without a doubt a religion. We're town shutting down on Friday nights, like that was always the dream. But like for me, lacrosse was such a beautiful combination of all these sports that I had played growing up.
Mm-hmm.
It has the offensive and defensive elements of basketball. It's almost identical when you think about 5-on-5 basketball versus 6-on-6 lacrosse, and just how the half court sets work and all of that. I mean, there's so many similar nuances. In pit game, two-man game, all these different things, the flow, the spacing, the motion, all of it is like very, very similar. And then you have the transition and build-up elements from soccer and moving the ball from side to side, up and down the field, all those different things. And then the physicality element of like a hockey or football. And in the South, like you had a lot of football players playing lacrosse too, so it was and a lot of football coaches or whatever that were coaching
back in
lacrosse.
the day, Jim Brown, right?
Yeah,
so he was the best lacrosse player probably ever.
Yeah,
and besides being an NFL Hall of Famer, so
and there's actually a great interview from like Wayne Gretzky who talks about at 15 years old, he stopped playing lacrosse and went full on to hockey because lacrosse was too physical. Like he was getting beat up way too much playing lacrosse. He's like, like, these guys are crazy. But it's a national sport in Canada. It's a loved game. It's a beautiful game for sure. But I think that's where I fell in love with it. It was like I got out on the field, and obviously you have to adapt to the skill element of playing with the stick and all catching and throwing, but I've grown up playing a bunch of hand-eye sports, like that wasn't super foreign. And again, stick skills, just like dribbling or anything else in some of these smaller skill sports, it's like those are stuff that you can control, right? You spend time hitting a wall, having a catch, taking shots, whatever it is, right? It's like you will get better. You will figure it out. You will start figuring out those small things. But it was like the actual game, how it was played, is like I could see it because of all the years playing all these other sports. And it just was like, man, I loved it. And it didn't ever really interfere with, lacrosse is in the spring, football's in the fall. Lacrosse usually didn't start until basketball ended. So there was like, football to basketball to lacrosse, and I was able to do that. And lacrosse would go from spring through summer back into, to start for football. And you felt like this was like the perfect, and for me, especially as a young kid, I was like, man, I could play college football and college lacrosse. I could do both if I really, if I was good enough. But it's like you could, and guys do. That's what's awesome. Like guys actually do. But I was like, yeah, that was the dream. It was like go play at like a big school that has football, basketball, or football and lacrosse, and like that's it, man. That's all I wanted.
At what point did you think, all right, I'm going to go to college and play lacrosse? So what did you have that moment where you're like, I think I'm going to be able to do this, or no?
I think probably after like the summer going into my junior year of high school. So after my sophomore season in high school, we won, playing varsity, we won the state championship, and then you're on those for lacrosse. In order to get recruited, you go on that travel circuit during the summer, AAU for basketball, all those things. And you start competing with kids from around the country, all these different programs, and you're like, man, I'm really not that far off from where some of these guys are. Now, some guys you're like, wow, this dude's head and shoulders way, you get it. Like that's why he's, ranked where he is, whatever. But for me, it was like, man, I just wanted to do it. Like I wanted to do it. Especially with lacrosse, because it's a sport that if you don't go play in college, then like the last time you're playing is probably your senior year of high school, like or whatever it is. It's like that you don't see many. There's more now, but you don't see like pickup lacrosse games going on. It's not as easy as organizing like a pickup hoops game or whatever, right? It's like you need a lot of bodies if you want to play, full field and 11v11 or 10v10, whatever. And so I was like, man, I want that experience. And for me, it was like, if I did it and I didn't love it, it's like you could always go to a big school and have that experience. Like, nothing would change that. Nobody would bat an eye. It happens all the time. People join, quit, whatever. But like, I just felt like, man, for me, lacrosse, I owed so much to, because it was a sport and a community that wrapped their arms around me when I was at my lowest point. And from the amount of cards and coaches reaching out, random strangers reaching out when I was in the hospital, like you felt so much love towards the sport early on. It was the first thing that I could go back and do. I remember sitting in the hospital bed, like holding a stick, being like, wow, like it fits in my hands. I could still do this. I could still figure out a way. I got to figure out how to run. I got to figure out how to, do all those things. But it's like, I can at least hold a stick. And I didn't lose my mental ability to think about the game and navigate it. And I knew I was going to have to use that more than anything because you think about like now I'm not as fast as I was. I'm not as strong as I was. I got to be smarter than anybody and everyone. And I think, after my sophomore year, you going against those kids and like feeling like you can keep up, you can compete, made a lot of difference.
Right. So, so you looking at now that you got your sights focused on going collegiate wise, what brought you to High Point?
So the High Point connection was one that was formed through like random circumstance and just where I was at that point in my life. So I finished, I talked about I finished my sophomore season. You start getting a few people reach out. And then I remember seeing like an article posted about this new school starting Division I program in High Point, North Carolina. And I look up the school and I'm like, wow, this place looks pretty crazy, pretty cool, pretty nice. And I look at the dates of when they're starting the Division I program, and it was, their first season, I think it was my senior year of high school. So it was a few, I was like, all right, well, they're going to need bodies. I looked at where it was. It was only an hour and a half or so from where I was currently. And we actually used to drive by there. I was still getting surgeries done in Chapel Hill.
How many surgeries did you finally go through?
Probably well over 100. I mean, well over 100 between laser treatments and small little, they call them Z-plasties, where you take a scar and they can, move it and expand it so you get a little bit more range of motion in your whether it's on your hands, whether it's your neck, wherever those scar bands are that are constricting you. We would do stuff like that to help just get more range of motion. Mostly everything was to try to get as maximum range of motion, or just fix up whatever I destroyed or tore playing.
Toe dropping off.
Yeah. So, small things like that. But yeah, so like we were going up to Chapel Hill, and it's all on I-85. So like in order to, you pass right past High Point on your way to Chapel Hill and vice versa. And we were coming back from a surgery, and my parents are like, hey, let's go check out the campus real quick, like while we're heading back. And I remember this because I'm in the back seat and I'm still a little out of it from coming out of the anesthesia and all that. But we're driving on the campus, and I'm like, man, everything is so green. Like the grass is so green and so nice. Like the buildings, everything matches. It's like that, if you haven't been to High Point's campus, everything is it's brick. It's all under the same. Again, everything looks the same. They've had the same architect, all that stuff. And so I see the campus, I'm like, man, this place is incredible. And then you fast forward a few months later, I'm doing an interview with Lacrosse Magazine that was just, wanted to talk about my story and those things. And we go through the whole interview, and the very last question he asked me is like, where do you want to go to play your college ball? And I'm like, man, like, I don't know. I was 15 when he asked me. I remember I was like in my mom's classroom doing the interview in her office, and the guy like kept badgering me. He's like, well, where are you going to go? Like UNC, Duke, UVA? I'm like, dude, if they want to take me 100%, like I'm not going to turn down that. I was like, I don't think I'm on that level, but I was like, if those schools come calling, I'll definitely answer. And he was like, all right, like give me something. I was like, all right, there's this small school that's going to start a program. It's called High Point University. I was like, if everything works out and I could end up there, I was like, that'd be really cool. I didn't know Coach Torpy at the time. The team had barely been announced, just on like a side little blurb on U.S. Lacrosse's website. So it's like not really many people knew. I get the magazine when it prints a couple, like a month or two later, it comes out, and the very last sentence was like, Connor McKemey plans to attend High Point University. And I was like, well, shoot, I guess he's putting it out there. And it didn't, I don't even know if it took a week before Coach Torpy was calling me and was like leaving me voicemails, because he was trying to figure out who the heck this kid was. Like he was still coaching it at I think Dartmouth at the time, like coming down on when he had his off time to find a house and meet the staff and try to start this thing. And he gets the magazine put on his desk, and he opens up and he sees it. And I was like, who the hell is this kid? So we end up planning, it worked out where it was like he was going to be in town at High Point.
Yeah.
We were just going to drive up early to go see him before we headed over to Chapel Hill for the surgery. And I was in his. We ended up being late for the surgery, by the way. But I ended up sitting in his office for probably 2 hours, and it was like the easiest, most natural conversation with a complete stranger I've ever had. And it was like we were two souls that were just bonded right away.
Nice.
It was like one of those things. And when I left there, he basically was like, "Look, you may never play here. You may not, whatever it may be, but he's like, if you want to be part of this family, this team, this community, it's like that door's open." He's like, "I've never seen you play lacrosse, so I have no idea, what your talent level is, but he's like, I know who you are as a person." And he's like, "I'm trying to build this thing from scratch. So it's like if I could have a guy like you and then he's like, it's worth giving you that spot." And so that kind of set my mind at ease of like, all right, I at least have a home.
Yeah.
But I also was like, I didn't want a handout. It's not how I was kind of raised. So it was like, all
Yeah.
right, now I have something to shoot for,
Mhm.
something to strive for, and something to, that was like, all right, this is my next motivation. It's like, look, I want to go to High Point, and I don't want to be a charity case. Like I want to,
Yeah.
compete. I want to be a part of it, in whatever facet or phase that I could. But by just having that opportunity, it was like that little carrot dangling in front of me, and for the
Yeah.
next 2+ years through high school, it was doing everything I could to mentally and physically get to where I needed to be so that when I did arrive at High Point, it wasn't my freshman year and it wasn't my sophomore year, but by the time I got to, to junior and senior year, like I'm out there competing, I'm out there contributing, I'm out there being a part of something that was so much bigger than just me. And like it was the best lacrosse experience I could have ever had or ever asked for. The only thing that would have ever made this experience better would have been being with my brothers, because playing on the high school team with them, and being at practice with them, like, it's something different when your brothers are there. Like, you guys are going at it for, whatever it is, 90 minutes, 2 hours, kicking each other's ass. And then it's like, get in the car right after. All right, what do you guys want to grab, for dinner or whatever? Sure. It's like, it's some things carried over, but for the most part, it was like, I had such a great group of guys at High Point that understood who I was, what I was all about. I had a great group of friends that I met at High Point that weren't even lacrosse players. And I had this new home, that really, after being at High Point for 4 weeks as a freshman, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be here for the rest of my time. Did I know I was going to be there for now 10 years? Probably not, but it just goes to show how much I love this area. I love that place and that school. And yeah, I mean, it became an instant second home for me and Coach Torpy, the staff, my teammates. It's like they're some of the best guys in the whole world. And just, again, to have that opportunity to live out a dream that I always wanted, regardless of what happened to me.
Yeah.
I think it meant so much, but to know that everything that it took to get there, like, just, again, it made it a little bit more satisfying for me. And when I finally had to hang up the cleats, it was like, all right, like, you did, I gave everything I could to that sport as a player. And I think that's what kept me around. When I ultimately went back and coached, it was like I saw how much the game gave to me and to the people around me, and just how important it could be. It's bigger than just a sport, man. And anybody knows sports are bigger than just that little bit of competition, and all the life skills and things that you learn, the bonds, the structure, all of that stuff. It correlates to the success that you're trying to achieve going forward. And I knew that by just being with those guys through the blood, sweat, and tears, for 4 years, it's like, man, it wasn't just me. Everybody that comes out of that program, they're doing great things. And we chatted about it, but it's like we have what, 3 or 4 guys that are Navy SEALs now from our program.
Yep.
I don't know how many Division I teams can say that, let alone a team that's only been around for 10, 11 years. So it just shows, not just those guys, but guys all over the workforce, and just a lot of that is a testament to the culture and the structure that Coach Torpy kind of provided and showed us.
Yeah, so thinking about as a player, what was your most challenging time that if you can get it down to one most challenging thing you had happen to you at High Point? And then let's go switch it over. Then we'll talk about, hey, what was the best time you ever had?
Yeah. So I think my most actually a bunch of us have this war story, which was like we had when I was a junior, we had a freshman class of guys come in that end up a bunch of those guys are great players, but they were they were not as easy to control as some of the other kids, and like they were a little, they like to have a good time. They're not bad kids. I love them. It's just like those first few weeks were not fun with punishment runs and all sorts of things. But there was one specific morning. It was probably the third or fourth time some kid in that class like broke one of our rules or whatever. And this was our third punishment run in a couple of weeks. And Coach Torpy was like, "Listen, at the end of this, like you guys are either going to get it or you're not." And
what's an example of punishment run? What do you?
So like this specific one was we had to carry two of the like blocking dummies that you see on football fields. We had to carry those around the track 28 times with like, and people. So it was like half the team had to have their hands around touching the dummies, and the other half were doing basically hill sprints, push-ups, sit-ups, all that. And it was like they would go around the track 2 times, you'd switch, go around the track 2 times. We were there for 2+ hours. I remember weighing myself after, and I had lost like 9 pounds or something absurd, where I was like, oh my God. But when we all got through, that was the last issue we had for not just for the next 2 years. We didn't have another issue. Like that was it. Everybody got it. And it's like so cool going down the line because, again, coaching with some of these kids and having some of the alumni come back while I've been a coach or whatever, like they bring up that day. And it was like, we remember being there from 4:45 till, right around 7 o'clock.
Watch the sunset.
Yeah. And just, but at the end, what's so crazy is you're suffering. You're have kids that are like trying to give up or trying to quit, whatever, and you have teammates carrying them around. But then by the end, when we got to that last 2 rotations, like everybody's high-fiving, cheering, because you're mad at that point. You're like, you've lost your mind. You can't feel anything, so it doesn't matter. There's no word for tired at that point, but you're like, we did it, and like we got through it, and it bonded us as a team and as a unit, and again, like, something so trivial as that, where it was like we're all dealing with the suck together. I mean, you guys, you guys know it from buds and all those other things. It's like but that's like the guy when the group is done and they have all stuck together, or maybe you've lost 1 or 2. It's like that group, that unit is so much stronger and so much more cohesive.
They're forged in fire.
Oh yeah, and it like it made and that was again probably the moment where. Even for me, I didn't even think I could physically do it, but I wasn't going to be the guy that was sitting out because of my feet or whatever. And when I got through it, I was like, holy crap, man, I was capable of a lot more than even I thought. And I had been through some stuff, but I was like, man, like, and I know I got some pride from it because it's like, look, these guys are, I'm not saying I'm not able-bodied, but these guys don't have nearly the issues or the problems that I was dealing with. But it's like we all dealt with it. We all did it.
Yeah.
And again, it made that group of guys, like, you're bonded for life. It doesn't, and that team especially, like those guys, like you'll have them for the rest of your life. It doesn't matter. And when we bring up stories, like as much as you talk about some of your highs is winning and beating some of these great teams, almost everybody goes back to those stories where it was like, that was the hardest practice or the hardest thing we'd ever dealt with, but we all did it, and everything going forward never even compared, and you were like... So
is that your best example too? Or do you have another one you want to bring out that was your best experience?
Yeah, I'll bring out my best experiences as this one is probably... I'll give you one as a player and one as a coach. So as a player, for me, it was probably the first goals like points I scored in a game. It was a scrimmage my junior year.
Yeah.
And I had been struggling that summer. I had tore my shoulder, and so I missed all fall ball and was rehabbing all through the fall. And so the first opportunity I really got to pad up and play again was when we came back for our early spring training. We get back right around like a couple days after the new year, and I'm finally catching up to speed, like testing out my shoulder. And we talk about injuries and breaking my toe, but I had actually never had a physical injury like that, like tearing something or, breaking a bone or anything. Like I hadn't done any of that. Obviously I dealt with the bird. Yeah, I made up for it tenfold, no doubt. But like, yeah, so it was a new experience for me, but it wasn't something that upset me because like, look, like for me, this was walk in the park for everything else. So I couldn't feel sad for myself and any of that. But we had 2 scrimmages, and in the first game, I missed like a bunch of shots. I had like a couple turnovers. I was like a shell of myself. You're just kind of getting the cobwebs off and catching up to speed. And but we played a scrimmage right after that, and same thing. I got back in and had 1 quarter left to play, and it was like something, just like everything kind of like slowed back down. You talk to anybody that's played sports, it's like things just like slowed down again. And I felt that, and it was like, boom, inside cut, catch a feed, finish. You're like, oh my God, like, all right. And then the next possession, catch one, dodge a guy, feed it to the guy who fed me, he scores. And then we're cheering. And then it was like 2 possessions later, ball comes down, nobody picks me up, step in, take a shot, and I'm like, wow, like the bench is going crazy, Coach Torby's going crazy. I'm like, man, this is such a great feeling. It was like that ultimate high, and then everything kind of just like followed in after that. It was like I needed that, like I'm back kind of moment, and that was what it was. And then as a coach, like I've always felt like the wins and the success that we've had as a coach, as coaching, is way more satisfying or gratifying than as a player.
Did that surprise you?
Huh?
Did that surprise you?
It surprised me a little bit.
I have the same, when I do the coaching I do now professionally, it does surprise me a lot how satisfying. I'm sorry.
Like it's so different. Because again, you're rooting for somebody else's success. Now it's on you, because like if I don't prepare you or give you the right tools for success, that's on me. If we lose, it's on me, and if we win, it's usually because you guys played really well and took care of your job. And but like the amount of time as a coach that you spend preparing, working on individuals, practice planning, everything is, tenfold compared to as a player, right? It's like you're showing up to practice, you might watch some film here and there, but you're still a student athlete, you got classes, you got other priorities, all those other things. It's like, this is your job as a coach. It's the only thing that's on your mind. But going into the spring of 2019, so I had finished my first year coaching, we had a pretty good season. And then the next year, or that summer, I had some opportunities to interview with UVA, which was a school that I had a lot of admiration for. It's a big program. And for me, being 1 year out of coaching and having an opportunity to interview with a school like that, like it meant the world to me. And I go and I do go through the interview process, and I don't get selected. I was like, all right, that it sucks, but it is part of it. Like it wasn't like I was upset, because I was still at High Point. I still was where I wanted to be. But in the coaching world, that's definitely a step in a different direction. Fast forward a few months later, they called me again in October for a different position that opens up, and it was like me and one other guy. I go back, do the interview process again, and it's like, no, they end up going with the other guy. So I'm like, all right, 0 for 2. Like you're not upset, but you're still like, you feel again like a dream job is being dangled in front of you and then just taken away. And a lot of it felt like it wasn't under my control. It was phone interview or the other interview, the guy, like the head coach wasn't even there the whole time. So we are playing them, and like, I think our 3rd game of the season or 4th game of the season. And like, I have that circled, starred, and everything else. I'm like, I cannot wait to go to their field. And we had, beat UVA when I was a player. So I had been on that field, stormed the field. Like, I knew what that experience was like, but we hadn't done it in 2015.
Yeah.
So now we're in 2019. We beat Duke, I think week 1 or 2, or the first or second game of the season, we beat Duke. And then we were playing Drexel and UVA 2 days apart.
Okay.
We go up to Drexel, we play them, we win in overtime. We come down. So we're 3-0 with, a win against Duke, who was like number 1 or number 2 in the country. And now we're playing UVA, who was, if Duke was 1, UVA was 2 or 3. And we're playing at UVA, and I'm just like, oh man, we are gonna beat these guys. Like, you just felt the feeling around like the lie, like so I never told, the only people that knew I went for the interview were Coach Torpy, and I think my family, obviously, and maybe one of the other coaches. But it was really like, it wasn't something I was trying to advertise. It was really hidden or whatever. And I just, like, we give pregame speeches before every game, and I was just like, you know what, I'm going to tell these guys, like, I'm going to be honest with you guys. Like, I interviewed for this place 2 times in the last few months. They turned me down twice. Like, I'm a guy that's always, walked around with a chip on my shoulder, and like, I was like, I want to beat these dudes more than anything. And I can't be out there to do it, but like, I had my little unit and those guys. And again, the guys have always been so wonderful with me, to me, whatever. And it's like such a family that it was like they understood like what it meant to me, like how I felt a little slighted, how I felt a little like, with that edge. And boy, did we go out and smack them right in the mouth and end up winning and like the celebration in the locker room was like 10 times bigger than when we won in 15. And it was like, you had guys, that like, you felt like how much it meant to them to win, but as a coach, you're like, man, this is so satisfying. Like, being able to shake like, I'm not,
you're right, I got it.
shake their hands after the game and just be like, thanks guys. Like, with knowing that it's like, they knew what I felt about it for sure. And I was just like, I have the utmost respect for those guys, but that was such a satisfying and cool feeling for me as a coach to be like, all right, look, like, we did this, we put the plan together. And for me, I was in charge of our face-off unit, and they have, Petey LaSalle, who just graduated for them, is one of the best face-off guys to ever do it. And this was his freshman year, and he was still very, very good. Yeah. And I think we went like 7 for 9 in the fourth quarter, which like completely tilted the field in our direction. Like, that was the big, turning point. Now, we had a lot of other things that had to happen, but it was just like, wow, man, not only did we play a role in my little unit, those guys performed and did their role, but it was like we made the adjustments we needed to. And then to get the win on top of it, I was like, man, this is the most satisfying moment I had in lacrosse, without a doubt.
This is another good shift. So while you're talking about at kind of the end of your, your coaching your career, where do you see lacrosse going in the future?
Yeah, so like the one thing that I always want to see with lacrosse is us to try to be a little bit more proactive as a sport than reactive as a sport. I think, there's. You look at the national semifinal that just happened over Memorial Day weekend, and semifinal game, which was a huge battle between Duke and Penn State. Duke wins in overtime on a sudden death goal, but when you go and you watch the replay, the guy clearly steps in the crease. It would have been a very easy call. It would have taken 2 seconds to review it, but in our actual rules, the only thing that you can review is time. So if there was a shot before the clock expired, or we have a shot clock in lacrosse, like if that thing, hit 0 and you hadn't shot it yet, like, we could go review that. And it's not like we don't have the technology to review it, because they're watching the instant replay up in the booth. It's just not in the rules. And that's going to be something that'll be talked about over the summer. They will probably change the rule. But 50-something, 60-something kids from Penn State that will never get that opportunity again. They battled their butts off, and unfortunately, that was just how it ended, and that's going to leave you, a sour taste in your mouth. I know one of my roommate currently is a player at Maryland who their season was ended because of a goal against UVA that was called a goal when it hit the pipe and was nowhere close to being a goal, but they called it a goal. They couldn't review it. But we also have this beautiful thing going on where we're changing the speed and the pace of the game, where it's trying to get into the Olympics. So they're dropping Yeah, so I think so with the sixes that's come out, which is 5v5 with goalies, and there's no face off except I think between quarters and things like that. It's just way more fast paced. It's a lot more like basketball where it's up and down, up and down.
Yeah.
Um, but with a sport again that requires so many bodies at the field level, it's not just 10v10 out on the field, but you have multiple lines of midfield. You got extra personnel. I think High Point's roster this year was like 70 plus guys, and that's like across the board now on Division One. When I was playing high school lacrosse, like we had 23 guys on the bench, 24 guys on the bench. I mean, on the team. So it's like that's triple the size now. They're almost like little football teams with how many guys, with injuries and how we practice. But like, if you want this thing to be adaptable and accessible to way more people, like just being able to, I don't want them to change. Like, hey, like lacrosse is going to be sixes going forward, but it's a nice alternative. Even if it's just as a startup leagues, even if it's for young kids, just to get them in the game, right? Like, you don't need kids that are 10 years old playing with defensive, long poles or anything else like that. Like, these kids just need to have a stick in their hand and understand how to play offense and defense and understand, the importance of stick skills and all those things like that. That's what we really need to be focusing on and again, being proactive with that stuff instead of like, man, like it's dying off, or man, we have to make these rule changes. It's like, look, like that should have been in, like, we shouldn't have had to have this happen for us to be like, hey, we need to review crease goals on, or just review goals for sudden death victory games. Like, that's it. Like, you just do that, like, just as a starting point. Like, doesn't matter how the goal goes in. It's like, if it goes in, like, let's just review it, make sure it's good, because the game's over. Like, it's over at that point. So, like, let's make sure we at least get that stuff right. And, but I had the opportunity in 2018 to go to the World Games in Israel, and they'll be going on, I think, in July of this summer as well. It's every 4 years, but COVID obviously kind of messed the calendar up a little bit, but. Like when I win 2018, you think, oh, there's only going to be, 15, 20 teams there. There's 70 countries represented.
That's awesome.
For lacrosse, man. And it's like, that is such a beautiful thing. Like that just shows how global, and a lot of it isn't just, kids in the United States that have, different, parents or grandparents or lineage to these. There's some of these countries, like Iceland was one, that it was every single guy on their team. That's where they were from. That's who they were. They had, it's not American-born guys going over there. Italy was one that only had, I think, 2 or 3, American players that either had dual citizenship or whatever, right? It's like, no, they were mostly all homegrown players. England, almost all homegrown.
Which country surprised you the most as far as who you saw?
So I would say Iceland and Jamaica would be the two. Like, Iceland, what was incredible is they actually have a really huge box presence. In Finland, like those, because they have big hockey and
that's true, yeah.
And so for them, they already have the facilities, because like box lacrosse is played in the rink, just like hockey is. Obviously, they have to put some turf down there, but it's the goalies wear the same paddings. A lot of it is the same paddings. They're just not wearing the skates and the pants. Yeah. And so a lot of those guys, like, they started a league, and they were freaking incredible. Like, they were so good. I was like blown away. And they're not like, none of them play like college ball in the States, or anything else like that. And you're just like, so they've gotten to where they were from their respective pickup leagues, or just, playing all the time. And you're just like, the level wasn't, the way they have the World Games split up. You have, like, I think 8 teams that are in the one bracket, and that's like United States, Canada, Iroquois national team, all like Australia, teams that have had lacrosse, and it's just there's a level for sure. Yeah. And then the rest of the teams are in this other pool. And so what made that other pool so cool is there's 50 odd teams in there, 60 odd teams in there, and from all over the world, all different backgrounds and demographics, but they had this, they have the huge tournament where everybody's competing, and you're just like, this thing goes over like 10 days, 12 days, just like the World Cup does, for soccer or whatever. It goes over a couple weeks period. So you get to watch these guys every single day, and like the matchups. And we had the pleasure of being able to do the commentary, the play-by-play
that's
stuff.
awesome. Yeah.
And so, like, you get so into you got the stats, you got like you got stories from some of these guys, you know, backgrounds, and it was just like, it was such a cool, and again, you're being out in Israel. Like I would have never had the opportunity to go there, and it probably wouldn't have been on my list of places to go, you know, if I was traveling. And it was such a beautiful country. They did such an unbelievable job with the tournament, and again, to see so many countries from around the world there, and like in that setting where everybody loves lacrosse, right? It's like, it was like everybody was there because it was for lacrosse, and it was such a cool thing to see that I was like, man, when we started playing lacrosse when I was a kid, nobody knew what the heck it was.
Do you see the same, like for the fans? Is it the same type of community that you're talking about everywhere you go to? So that same warm, welcoming type.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah. You're gonna have rivalries and some bitterness, no doubt. I mean, there's people that you know aren't gonna be fans of each other. But at the end of the day, what's so beautiful is it's like, if you you know, when you get past that little, you know, the rivalry aspect, it's like everybody knows like lacrosse is still that small family type sport, and like it's a sport that is full of multiple generations, full of brothers and cousins and family, you know, sisters, family members playing across all sorts of levels, and again, anywhere I go, especially as a coach, like what made it so cool, like you're traveling around the country, you're going to recruiting events, you're going to, you know, do all these different things in places that you've never been, but somebody somewhere you always have that one-off connection that's like, oh, like I played with this coach, or I played for this guy, or you know, I played on this team or played with these guys, and it doesn't matter where you are, everybody has, if it's not one person away, at max it's two. And once you start talking and sharing, it's like, man, we're all part of the same fraternity, the same brotherhood, and I think we know that it's like, man, it's still our baby, it's still a sport that's growing and changing and blossoming, no doubt. But again, it's like you're all looking out for each other. You're all wrapping your arms around each other, and we do our best, I think, to try to really truly uplift and support each other.
Where do you see the biggest growth in the United States as far as where do you think it's going to? Is it going to be still an East Coast thing primarily, or is it going to get out west in the Midwest anywhere? What do you think?
So it's definitely exploded. To South and West, 100%. I think Denver, when Coach Tierney, who just recently retired, Hall of Fame coach, went out there probably 10, 12 years ago, you know, that absolutely ignited. I mean, you had a 7-time or 6-time national championship coach, you know, coming out there. Not only does it help the university, but it's like all the youth programs. You know, it's a trickle down effect, right? It's all the youth programs. It's the club programs, it's the exposure, you know, being able to do things like that. And same with West Coast, and like the Ohio area, tons of great lacrosse players from Ohio and Michigan. A lot of areas that, again, traditional football powerhouse areas that are churning out great athletes. It's like, hey, here's a sport that's a great transition or crossover for football. It allows you to still be physical. It allows you to, you know, have great footwork, the ability to break down, the ability to read and react. You know, all of those different things you see in lacrosse. It'll keep you in shape because there's a lot more running and all those things. And again, for a lot of kids, it's a pathway to get to Division I athletics that is probably a lot easier or attainable than for football or basketball.
Yeah, it's not saturated.
And we keep adding. You know, we're doing a good job at continuing to add programs where it's you know, gradual. It's 1 or 2 teams at a time to help, you know, continue to build this thing up. I would love to see us like expand the NCAA tournament. I think that would be a huge additive now that we have 80 plus Division I teams. You know, I know for me, like I'll be bitter till the day I die that in 2019 when we were 13-3, like we didn't get a chance to go to the NCAA tournament, and we had beaten 7 teams that were in the NCAA tournament that year, and we beat the team that ended up winning the national championship. You know, so it was like because we didn't win our conference tournament, like we didn't get that automatic qualifier, so we didn't get to go in, you know, and it's like last year you had a team like Notre Dame who just won the national championship for men's lacrosse this year with the almost basically the same team, didn't make the NCAA tournament last year because they were 6-6 or whatever, but they had wins against, again, the best teams in the country. It doesn't matter. It's just like, it's such a small field that gets to go. I think it's 17 teams. And if you look at our other professional sports or collegiate sports, I mean, again, college basketball and baseball, it's like there's so many teams, and I get football, like, is what it is. But think about how many guys get the opportunity to play bowl games for football, right? And like, we don't even get anything close to that for lacrosse. It's like your season's done.
13-3. Have a nice day.
Oh yeah. Well, like my parents the week before we beat Richmond at the very last game of our season in 19 before the conference tournament, and I'm having lunch with my parents, and they're like, "Why are you so upset right now?" Like like I was in a bad mood. I will be very admitted about that. I was in a bad mood, and they kept poking me. It's like, you guys just won the game. Like, it's huge. I'm like, because if we lose to them in a week from now, somebody's going to have to explain to me why we're not getting in the NCAA tournament, and I'm not like, they're not going to be able to give me an answer that's like that would make sense to me. And I'm going to have to, and I was like, I don't want to think about losing because that's not who I am. But I was like, that's going to be a tough pill to swallow, without a doubt.
Alrighty, so let's talk about the Mac mentality. Let's get into that. Just tell me what it is you're doing, and you're kind of looking forward to the next several into the future. What do you got going on with the Mac mentality?
So a couple of years ago, really when COVID hit and I was taken away from my coaching job, like so many other people were, and I was kind of at home. It was like, all right, what can I had a bunch of thoughts and a bunch of things that. Obviously, I felt like there was some power in the story, but I felt like there was more so elements of it that like people needed to hear at that point in time. We're all facing this common struggle and adversity that kind of changed the way that I felt. Like I was really happy with where I was, and doing something that I absolutely loved, but I also felt incredibly selfish in a way because I felt like there was more that I could be doing, whether it's to, help people in a positive way, uplift people in a positive way, or I was given this gift through my story and through my experiences that I felt like, even if it was just going to make a difference to one or two people, like if it did, then that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And so my nickname was C-Mac. Like Coach Torpy could not say McKemey to save his life. He just could not say my last name. So he just cut it to C-Mac early, like my freshman year. And so when I was writing down some of these ideas and was putting together the start of the company and what I wanted to be my pillars, and I took that Mac and I broke it down into motivation, attitude, and courage. Because I think a lot of the stuff that I preach, a lot of stuff that I believe in is a lot to do with the power of our mind and the way that we think and approach life, but it's also the focus on the controllables and the stuff in our lives that we have more control over than we think. And for me, those three pillars were all three things that I know made a difference in multiple periods of my life, whether it was coming back from the accident, whether it was through the rehab process or anything else. There had to be some motivation there, and that motivation had to be maintained over a course of time to see change. It wasn't just, hey, let's get excited and happy for a day or two like most people. It was, if I wanted to see change, if I wanted to see progress, like I had to, there had to be motivation there. There had to be a driving force there, but it had to be maintained over a course of time. The attitude aspect, I think, is so critical for so many people because the way that we view things it's everything. The way we approach a problem, the way we look at it, the way that we view it, it's going to affect how the outcome is more often than not.
100%.
And so again, that was something that I felt like we could control. There are factors that can control our attitude. There's no doubt about it. But at the end of the day, from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed, like first thought can be positive and my last thought can be positive or productive or anything like that, right? It's like I have control over that. And then the most important part to me was the courage aspect, because there's so many elements of life that we can't control. There's so many elements of life that are unknown. There are so many things that go on that we can't explain. But but way too often we find ourselves like living in kind of, limbo or fear of those unknowns. I know for me, it was being able to have the courage to not just like withstand that stuff, but persevere through it, not knowing what the outcome could be. It was like just by, just saying like, all right, like we'll try it, or all right, we'll see what can happen, and we'll deal with the consequences after. But I know just having that initial, like, with everything that we do, just having some courage in our life, like it's so important. Because we know that there's fear out there, we know that there's unknown out there, but it's like, look, that shouldn't be the stopping point. Like that should be a stepping stone, right? Or a starting point. It's like when you get hit with that adversity, you get hit with that wall, man, like that's when the life really begins. Like that's when you see what you're made of. That's when you see what you're capable of. And that, again, that's the starting point. And so I felt all three of those things really worked well with each other. It felt like it was everything with who I was and what I believed in and what I wanted to preach. It was like, I don't want to sit here and tell, to audiences and people like my story over and over again. I want people to be able to leave there with something actionable. I want people to leave there with like, all right, this is a little different perspective. Obviously, people aren't going to have to go through what I went through to get there, and they shouldn't have to. It's like you shouldn't have a life-altering experience to look at life differently. It's like it shouldn't wait till that point. Especially when we're struggling or we're dealing with something. It's like, look, there's resources out there. There's people out there. It's not just me. There's tons of people out there that have great thoughts and great views and great beliefs and understanding on dealing with adversity, dealing with struggles, dealing with difficulties, and how to overcome them, how to, handle them. And again, for me, it was always just trying to take those most challenging and difficult moments in my life and like find that to be fuel to continue. And again, we talked about me breaking my toe, tearing my shoulder. I had failures, multiple failures along the way.
We all do, right?
Yeah,
that's
we
part
all
of life.
do. Yeah. So it's like, it's not like it's all going to be roses and sunshine and happy, but like, I know when I hit that wall or I hit that difficulty or I hit those problems, how, what is my motivation when dealing with it? How do I maintain it going forward? Like, what is my attitude when I'm facing it? How can it be changed or used to benefit me, not be a detriment? And then at the end of the day, am I being, do I have the courage? Do I have the strength? Do I have the fortitude? And again, sometimes when we're lacking on those three fronts, that's when it's those people around you that you have to rely on, or speakers or podcasts or whatever it may be, right? There's so many different avenues to like find a little motivation, hear something that will change my attitude or my perspective, or listen to a story, read a story, hear a story that's going to give you that courage, that strength, or whatever, right? There's so many things out there, and so for me, it was like, hey, can I just be an avenue to help people? And when I go and I speak, when I go and I write, when I do whatever I do, it's like I go into each room thinking, my goal here is to just impact one person. If we impact 1,000, 10,000, a million, wonderful. But like everywhere I go, it's like I just want to impact one dude, one girl, one person, one human being in this room, because if they're impacted and it made a change in their life, then I know what I'm doing is what I'm supposed to be doing. Because without that message, without those words, without that perspective, that person never hears it. And it, who knows where it goes from there. But when they do hear it and it makes a positive change or a positive impact in your life like that, that's what we're supposed to be doing. Everybody, and it doesn't matter what you do, it's like we need to spend more time trying to uplift people and be there for each other and put our arms around each other's shoulders. It's like, look, we're all dealing with the human experience. It's all different for each one of us, but we're all dealing with it together. And when we start living more together and more for each other, I don't know. For me, I think it makes such a difference.
Dude, I couldn't have said it better. Everybody, check out the book, Life Ignited. Connor, been a pleasure talking to you.
Yes, sir.
And don't be a stranger. Let's keep it up, brother. All right, and
100%.
We'll be seeing you down the road.
Yes, sir. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much.
Bro. Give me a hug, bud. Yeah.